first interesting thing that you can get inspired from this track is the bass. Now the bass is interesting, and there's one key thing in it that really makes it shine that you can take from it, okay? Okay, so the bass itself is just a square bass ran through a low pass filter. We can use an envelope here to open the filter up, and then it's playing this really sick pattern. The original, it has so much more oomph to it. And I couldn't figure out why until I used an echo here. Now I'm going to program this echo one more time with you guys so that you guys can take this technique and use it in your own music, okay? So we're going to apply the echo here. This is the way stock it will come. So we're going to lower down the dry and wet. If we do this, then you might like, I don't want to use an echo. It sounds like crap, right? Doo-doo. However, setting it up, right, to where it's notes based and lowering down the feedback gives us this. And notice how it just dun, 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 and now we get that, right? Next thing is they have this part of the bass wide. And the way we do that with a delay is we want to keep it like this, but now we're going to use the offset that you can find here, and we're going to nudge it a bit. Now we get that on the sides, okay? And that's insane. But from there, we can go into the modulation section, character, go ducking, lower down the threshold to tighten it up. Okay. From there, if you want to be like super like surgical, like on theory, like you don't want the low end to get messed up, then just move this guy to the left, which EQs the delay. And we can just target the top part of it. Now, the next thing here that I forgot to mention was with the feedback. You don't want a high feedback because the feedback pretty much determines how many times the sound will repeat, because echo is a rhythmic based effect. Something hits, and this time signature you're adding here, this division, is going to tell when the next repetition will be. But when you put a high feedback, those repetitions multiply. Now you get 4 to 5. But when it comes to bass, you want to lower that down to have more control. It's just going to repeat once, and that's it. You can play with that. The bass pattern is also very cool because it's a track that is in G Phrygian. So G Phrygian just allows you to play semitone up from the root note, which always provides badass vibes in G house and tech trance, etc. Because we don't want it to be doing, it's whack, too friendly. Yes, it's such a badass bass. Then they stop it here in their track. However, I decided to just keep it going because it's so dope, man. And if you want to sample this bass, go for it, guys, because again, like, I think you can sample this out, and yeah, it might sound like them, but sampling, interpolation, man, just make sure it doesn't blow up, because then they're gonna take all the money. Okay, the drums in this track are very basic. I decided to go just with a 909 because, you know, as a sound designer making the best sounds for you guys, I'm more focused on the synth sounds rather than the drums. However, the drum programming seems to be a very standard rolling hats pattern, which just means that you're going to go 1/16. You're going to program your close hats on the 1, the 2, and the 4, but not the 3, because the 3 is the space for the open hat. They do that as well, and they respect that, which tells me already that they're very adept producers, because usually most producers will do that. And if you're not using the 909 core kit from Ableton, you can have the close hat hit with the open hat at the same time. And I always advise people, you know, if you have two sounds with a similar timbre, a similar frequency, and they're inverse in polarity, that just means when you look at a audio wave, right, it's going either up or down. If it's inverted and you have two sounds playing that have very similar timbres, they will cancel out and you get mushiness, which honestly most house tracks you can hear them in. So I say always be very exact. Get your open hat sounding dope, close hats, and the clap. Again, I didn't really care too much about the remake in terms of drums, but just running it through a tape machine, which is the UAD Oxide. You can see that it warms up the hats, but at the same time too, it has a compression effect on that open hat from it sounding too pokey, so then it pushes it down a little more. And that's about it. Very, very simple drum patterns going on, but with their tracks, right, when you're writing music, one of the things you must realize is if you're going to be very synth heavy, you cannot have like 10 top loops going on at the same time, because that's just a recipe for disaster. If your track is more of a synth heavy track, usually the drums will be very basic, and you can hear this in Chris Lake tracks and Odd Mob tracks, and there's a reason why they do it that way. Okay, From there, the lead itself, I remade it to the best of my ability with Serum. I called it Pump It, which sounds like this for me. This is not exact, but it's around the ballpark. Pattern that it has. Very beautiful, very nice. The cool thing about the sound is that, and this is where I know these guys kind of know what they're doing, is there's a moment in the song where this happens. And it's funny because when you hear the sound, right, it's very flowy in the part where you got that beat going. But when this happens, it starts to thin out. So they're automating the decay and the release of their envelope and their amp envelope, which is envelope 1 by default, and envelope 3 is right to the cutoff of this. So that's how we know it's like this is the filter one, and it's getting shorter as well. If I do this, it's just shortening as we approach that transition. Another thing too, and I know I'm all over the place here, is there's a ride. And then as it approaches that too, the ride gets like shut off, gated in essence. And the way you do that is you go into Ableton, you go to the loop, and you pull this up. You have to be in beats mode with this turned off. That's what this signifies. You click here, and then you can automate in the envelope mode that. And it just starts, and then comes back in full force. Very thin, by the way, too, the ride. Okay. They also add an effect to this bell lead. I just couldn't figure out what it was. It might be like a very comb filter or slap delay. So that's something to keep in mind if you're trying to do something like that. From there, there's also this like whistle sound that they use. Sound Design World noise is a super like essential like tool. And what I mean is you can make open hats, closed hats with it, depending on the genre. We can also make whistle based sounds when you use a filter, like with a huge resonance. So they do something like, and then it closes. Okay, and that's just automation on the cutoff. So if you go in Ableton and click A, you get the automation, and you just click on anything you want to automate. If it doesn't, you can configure and click what you want to automate, like so. And from there, boom, just going from down to up. So I believe they do something like this, where you get this sort of like this. Not like that, but, and then it comes down. Let me just, super nice. Again, not super exact there with this, but maybe just more distortion or a downsample is needed. Yeah, there you go. Downsample is an effect that reduces the bit rate of the sound, creating this kind of like crunchiness to it. So it's something that you can do strategically. You know, usually most people are like, I want the highest audio quality, but using audio degradation can also provide very interesting results, which this kind of music is very heavy on, especially if you start getting into other artists in the space. Okay, there's the vocals, of course, which, you know, the way this genre works, I feel like they sampled it out of a song. And instead of me looking for the song, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to use my own voice in order to do it. So I did it, and it sounds like this raw. Keep it pumping. Keep it pumping. Pump, pump, pump. Keep it pumping. Pump, pump, pump. Okay, and then you got the bump, bump, bump vocal chops. So the way that I usually lower down the deepness of my voice is with Alter Boy, just by using the pitch and the formant there. Okay, so Alter Boy to lower down the pitch of the vocal, cutting a lot of the mids out of my vocal. Keep it pumping. Just because that's just going to be determined on what kind of mic you use. Keep it pumping. Keep it pumping. So I felt like it was just too much of the doo-doo, you know, if I'm very close to the mic. My voice gets like a lot of mid-lows. The farther away, the less I get. This mic has a feature to remove that, but when I put it, I get this weird AC hum, a loop that occurs. So we keep it on the muddy version. From there, using a utility to collapse to the left or right side, because alter board can sometimes create width. I'm not sure why. And you know, that width is not the best kind of width, because when you hear it in mono, the vocal will get lost because of the left and right just cancel each other out when it gets summed up into mono. Usually you'll hear, this is bad because most people that hear on Bluetooth speakers will not be able to hear the vocals. So you want to make sure, again, that you're taking care of that. From there, we use the iconic Mag EQ4, which is a really cool plugin for adding air to vocals. Many people like the air band here, so I'm using 10, and I'm just boosting the air for presence.
Keep it pumping. Pump, pump, pump. Keep it pumping.
With it off.
Keep it pumping.
Very warm, very up.
Keep it pumping.
A little more like
Pump, pump, pump. Keep it pumping. Pump, pump, pump. Keep it pumping.
and it's just like switching between, like, you know, the different syllables of the voice. But if you hold Alt Shift and click, you can also move it around, so that makes it a little easier. So if you usually, well, I'll tell people with like vocal chops, just get the rhythm down first, and then from there you can start to hold Alt Shift and click to, you know, get different vocal chop syllables if you want, like so. The other thing too is the length is very important, you know, because that can help the rhythm sound a little more syncopated. And they do that a lot, by the way, which is a pain in the butt for this next vocal, which is the one that I kind of wanted to talk about more than that one, because that one's just my voice process. But this one, it's sick, isn't it? So they are using vocoders, and again, this genre, like Robbie Doherty, Obscure, and there's another guy, I forget the name, Bark something. He has those barking bass lines, let's just say that. Josh Baker, there you go. They use a lot of the vocoder effects. In this particular one, it's a noise-based vocoder effect. Ableton has it here by clicking here, going noise. I lowered down the depth. You can even automate that. Get stereo. One thing to note that I didn't do as good as they did is that they do have this sort of auto pan effect that occurs on it to get the movement, and then you get the dance at the end. The other thing too is there's this echo that gets automated in at the dance portion of it, but super dope. I mean, the transition setup is insane, because now when you do that, and there you go, and we get that sound again, which keeps repeating like every 8 bars, you could say. And super dope. Again, really top-notch stuff coming from them. Just a lot of attention to detail stuff in this song. Now, the next thing that occurs that's super iconic, which is one of those things I wanted to show in this video as well and highlight, is this really neat effect they do. Now, I didn't nail it 100%, but I'm pretty sure this is what they're doing. The thing, though, that you guys have to realize when it comes to a lot of music production stuff is the plugin you use kind of do matter. Some people say they don't. And in basicness, right, if you're trying to just make something, it doesn't matter, because what plugins you use and what gear you have will really dictate your sound and how certain things sound when you execute them. For instance, like analog synths and all that. But at the end of the day, a saw is still a saw, even if it sounds a little different. Here, this delay effect is super dope, and I'm going to show you guys how to do it, but it sounds like this. And they do it to transition from the section of the song where it starts to get even more harmonic. And then the bass changes too. Okay. So this effect, the way that I was able to do it was to put an echo boy, because I couldn't get it with Ableton, in a return track. Now, a return track is a track that you're going to create that you can send audio to. And usually those return tracks, you're going to put effects that are at 100%. This one's not, so there you go, I fucked up. But the idea of that is that you have a channel that has the delay or the reverb or whatever you want specifically there, which allows you to have more freedom to EQ it and compress if it's needed. It's a very old school way, and what I mean by that is usually a lot of the old timers that learned how to mix through school will use it a lot, versus, you know, dance techno producers, usually I find they don't like them because they just fucking add So what's going into it is going to be the clap. So we can automate by clicking here on the return, the volume of the clap coming into that Echo Boy. Also that beautiful bell sound that is here that we talked about. And that one's also getting automated in. Now, if you notice, you know, I have the Echo Boy there, nothing's really happening. You know, like it's just very basic. Okay. So remember, anything delay based is delay is a time-based effect. So when you do this, if you change the time, then you start getting effects. Now, depending on the echo you're using and the algorithm using an Echo Boy, right? It's going to change the way the time reacts. The sound reacts to the time change, and that's what's occurring here. The time on the delay is changing, creating these pitch bends, in a sense, on the delayed sound. So now if we start here and we start to move it, the higher you go in time, the lower pitch, and the faster, the higher pitch you go. Okay, and this is the effect that the pluck also gets in here that I just didn't put, but it's going to be like this very slap delay, like very, very slap high feedback. So what we're going to do right now is just move this. Okay, so what you're going to do, if you want to execute this for yourself and be a pro, because this is one thing that when I hear in people's tracks, I'm like, they know what they're doing. So we're going to resample by clicking here and resample that. And then we're just going to hit record. You have to move it and get it exact, but we're not gonna get too crazy with it. But now we have this audio signal we've created, so now we can turn this off, right? And turn this. And you get that. Now, of course, you want to finesse and play with it. It takes, you know, some finessing to get the exact take you want, but don't be scared again to like delete stuff and then loop stuff if you want and move stuff around. Maybe it'll sound cool. But it's such a cool technique that you can use. This is one of those climax techniques. It's a technique that's very unique to transition, very interesting sounding. It's more of a producer-based technique, I feel, which means that it will impress the producers, like how the fuck did they do that, rather than the listener. But again, these guys, I think they're producing at a very high level in terms of what they're doing in their songs. That, again, it got me even going, oh, fuck, what the hell, man? You know, it's sick. When I hear the pack coming, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I mean, it's super creative on their part to like switch it up here and just get into that. And also for remaking purposes, it becomes kind of like, fuck. So the first part of this pad, because they repeat this like twice or 4 times before they start changing it, and from there I didn't know what they changed, and I tried, and it's just too finicky to get into. But the original ones are just going from, the first part is G minor chord, 7 added, so extended. That just means that you create your normal chord, right? Boom, boom. A neat little trick that I teach people that some people don't agree with is that if you count the notes in your scale, like from, let's say, the G, 1, 2, the second note you count will be a note of that chord that's very harmonic with that. And then again, notes in the scale, 1, 2, so another one, and now again, 1, 2, and now we have the 7th, which, because we added that 4th note. And pretty much just switching between that G to the E flat or D sharp notes, and that's it. Now the sound is an organ-based sound, and I feel like a lot of these guys have like Juno, like old school based plugins that they go through in order to get these sounds. So as a sound designer that specializes more in Serum to bring this sound to people that utilize Serum, like I have to worry about doing all this. But if you can, if you want to try and do a remake of a sound, you hear it's an organ-based sound, then definitely look, try and look for it rather than remaking it. However, organ-based sounds are just very sine-based, resonance-based sound, which creates like a very like, retro nostalgic vibe to it. But it's just, again, an organ-based sound. And then a saw that's wide. Now, the thing about this sound that's really clutch is they're using an MG-Low 6 filter, which just means a 6 dB pull filter. This gets less strict the lower the number, as you can see. They're not doing this, even though that sounds delicious. But 6 works because we can add the resonance here and we still have a lot of the high frequencies coming in. So now the saw plays a role in giving us that nice warmth in the sound. Because if I remove it, it loses meat. So now the saw, I feel they layered the saw in there. And then the beautiful thing with synths, you know, it's the movement of stuff. Usually people like to criticize synths as sounding very stale. And when that happens, I'm just like, you guys are just getting the wrong presets. Selfless promo here. But envelopes, movement of the filter is one of the most beautiful things about synthesizers. There's a lot of different analog synths, and a lot of them are set up differently with different kinds of filters, and that's what gives to the sound. The certain filter has a certain sound not many people like because it's very basic, right? It's all in the programming. It's not really trying to mimic analog in a sense, I feel, but you can still get good results with it. Like I said, it's more about the flavor, the way it's going to sound coming out of it, that you get when you're switching between different synths and buying these expensive synths to collect. But here we add an envelope to that, and we don't want to move it all the way up, just slight. And that adds that beautiful flow to it. Okay, now as this comes in, I also want to take note that they lower down the release of the pluck, before now. And the reason they do that would be probably because the chords start to add more sustain to the song, more lingering, that you don't really want the lingering sound of that, the tail of it interacting with the chords. So something that they do. The other thing they do is they switch the fucking bass here, and I'm just like, oh my god, like, so they go from this, and then they switch. And since the chords are going from the G down to the C, then it's kind of self-explanatory. They would also want to do that with their bass. So the bass goes, and I don't know if this is exact, by the way, but it's close. Okay, so again, but they switch the bass to something a little more deeper, and I still hear the OG bass in there, but this part of the track just gets so busy that it's very hard to pinpoint stuff, but it's super dope to know because as a producer, right, this kind of teaches you a bit about contrast as you're moving from different sections, go something from that's very badass, very like, let's keep it pumping, go to something a little bit more harmonic and more emotionally provoking. Something to kind of learn from this is just to go with the flow and trust your ideas. I feel like this just came naturally, like, oh, let's just do that. And they just stuck with it and had the confidence to leave it. And of course, they're already kind of big producers, so they can do it and people will go, hell yeah. Well, if another producer does it that's not as big, then you have to kind of prove that it works, right? The last thing I want to talk about is the section towards the end of the song that they do, which is essentially... Okay, so we got that OG bass square. Doom, doom, doom. So there's this new sound I made, just a basic saw. It could be a square too. But again, the thing is the filter movement that they respond to the bass with. So it's, again, an envelope being added to the cutoff, not pushed all the way to the right. I mean, it sounds cool too. Now we're Josh Baker, but they just do the slight with a resonance up, which increases on the cutoff point. And that creates a whoop effect for that little section that they use. And I don't know, maybe they did that section so the DJ could loop that part and mix in the other song, because that's a really cool sequence that doesn't really get you going, but get you more anticipating what's going to happen. All right, guys, so these are some of the things that I wanted to discuss from this little remake I made. I essentially do these because I want to test out the sounds on the sound mix I work for you guys. Like I said, I've been working on Minimal Nights Volume 2, which is a minimal tech pack. There's Volume 1, which did really dope, and I appreciate the support you guys have given it. I hope it helps you make this kind of music that you want. These type of sounds are very hard to remake, and I've tried my best with them, so I hope that you guys enjoy the pack when it comes out. And hopefully this will be a cool little demo to put for the pack. So when people hear it, they go, oh, this is some cool sounds. That's the whole point that I did this. But also, I did it because I know a lot of you guys love to learn and get inspired from your favorite producer. So hopefully if you guys can find some inspiration in this, some techniques to make the music you want. Because at the end of the day, my goal is to help you guys make the music you envision and help you get to where you want to be. It's my muse, you could say. It makes me happy, and I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to have you guys supporting. As always, you guys take care, and you guys have a great rest of your day.